I'd like to call a meeting to order. Can you stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we go on to the next item on the agenda, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Mr. Bishoping. This will be his last board meeting before a new superintendent comes on board. I've been a board member for a number of years and been part of having other superintendents. I've never met a calmer person in my life with some of the things that have gone on in the school district in the last few months. And I totally appreciate it. And I give you a lot of respect for all of the information you've given us and the leadership, and it's been very nice knowing you. I know you've been here a couple times in the last couple of years, and you probably feel like, oh, I know Batavia. So we're sad to see you go, but happy we have a new superintendent. So thank you very much for your service. Okay, next item on the agenda is public to be heard, and we do have someone this evening, Rebecca Eldridge, and she's going to speak on safety and well-being of students due to lack of school policies being implemented. Ms. Eldridge. Wherever you'd like to stand, and you have 3 minutes.
I stand here tonight on behalf of many students and families whose stories and voices have been dismissed. 2 weeks ago, my family became one as well. I regret to inform you that I have found it necessary to suspend your son because his presence in school possesses a danger. I read these words minutes after a call that my son was assaulted. A documented swollen eye, bloody nose, bruised ribs, abrasions to his legs from being repeatedly kicked and punched by his bully of 4 years. Viewing the footage of my son's assault within these very walls is something I cannot describe. Threats, intimidations throughout the day were reported by my son. Staff failed to report to their superiors, which is school policy. The result was an assault on my son. According to school documentation, my son defended himself by throwing a basketball and confirms that he did not receive medical attention until later. He was sent on by a teacher to his next class moments after the assault. That is neglect without question. They said be grateful for 2, not a 5-day suspension. Under administration apologized and documented, your son was not the aggressor, but we have to. It's policy. It was confirmed by IT and higher administration that there is audio. Under administrators lied to my face regarding this and said there was none. 3 times there has been intimidations, threats, and physical harm by the older sibling of the boy who assaulted my son. The school has done nothing. My son has lost education, sports, suffered physical and emotional trauma. His rights under school policies, the Code of Conduct, and the Dignity for All Students Act that was signed into law in 2010. They were all violated and continue to be. My son's record was expunged by high administration, oddly without even a conversation or an appeal. Some camera footage has now conveniently disappeared, and statements recanted, and more. In recent weeks, your student and community has desperately asked for their voices to be heard, changes to be made, and action. I implore you to take action for every single student that walks through these halls. Enforce policies for every student, every day. If such words as zero tolerance is to be used, then let it mean 0. If not prohibited, then don't allow it. And words such as we are better together, then be better. Change is in your hands tonight, and every one of your students, including my son, deserve nothing less from every one of you tonight. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are presentations, and we have a bit of a change. The first one will be the student ex officio report, Ms. Kylie Tatarka.
Good evening, board members. Great to see you again. So I'm just gonna state a positive before I get into some negatives. Many school activities have been very successful, including the high school football team and the start of the season for both our girls and boys swim teams. And the drama club's performance of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes was a large success, and we will be beginning preparations for the production of Mamma Mia, which we all look forward to. And now, due to the pamphlet and the situation that occurred from it, students expressed a feeling of a lack of safety within our schools due to that situation, which was addressed by our administration. High school counselors went around to classes to both understand how the students have been feeling and how they could potentially make the students feel safer. This process went well for many students, where many kids have expressed that they finally felt heard by our administration. One thing that some teachers do, that the student body urges, is to check up on students, whether a teacher, an administrator, or just a parent. Students go through a lot of stress, especially right now, and we need adults' help to get through this together. Communication and trust is key. I personally look forward to seeing change, especially for my friends, my peers, and my own sibling who goes to school with me. And whether I am a senior and I won't see much change in the coming year, I look forward to seeing how my own younger classmates can get the change that we need. So I urge you all to think of students first. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the interim superintendent update, Mr. Bishoping and Mr. Kessler.
So we'll start with Mr. Kessler to give you an update on the follow-up. As Kaylee had spoken regarding the work with the counselors. That
Move into her seat.
Sure. Mr. Kessler.
So Kylie referenced the work of our counselors a couple days after we returned. So just to give you a summary, there was definitely some student concern around safety issues of the social media posts and the closing of the school on Friday, and we wanted to hear from students themselves. There was a lot that was out on social media, and so the way that the counselors formatted it is they went to all the social studies classrooms, which over the course of 2 days hit every student. So it allowed for a group size of about 20 to 25 students that they could hear from. And so they noted from the students some of the things that they saw as positives about our school culture, some of the things that they saw as negatives, and some ideas that they wanted us to consider for follow-up for this year. The counselors were expecting that there would be a general feeling that students weren't feeling safe based on the situation there. And as Kylie reported, based on that actual situation, they felt unsafe about the situation, but didn't, the majority of them didn't talk about more pervasive safety issues or bullying per se in that traditional term. They did share about the school environment post-COVID needing some improvement in terms of teachers checking in on them, and so a lot of the feedback came in regards to attention to students' mental health. I also agree with them. I'm personally seeing the mental health needs over the last couple years as having increased a lot, and the students recognize that too. Some of our upperclassmen are kind of feeling the loss of some of the activities that we were able to do pre-COVID, and so some of their feedback was around, not having traditional school dances, and even to the spot of like the way that we are spacing for COVID, that they feel the impact of the socialization in terms of that. They had some feedback about that they wanted us to consider around the dress code. And so my plan is to meet with a subgroup around that and to potentially come back to all of you with some recommendations that the students might want you to consider. They talked about us really having a focus on public affirmation of the great things that they're doing, both on social media, and the students get positive referrals that we give directly to the students, but some of them wanted us to publicize that on the announcements more. Our seniors wanted a space where we could create a senior lounge, and so we're using a small cafeteria for that based on the recommendation. Another area to implement is creating an anonymous check-in sheet for students to have a check-in with the counselors. And so the counselors have made some posters and forms that are going to go up next week. The students know how to do it. All they have to do is take a picture of like the barcode that's in the middle. It'll take them right to a form where they can anonymously say, hey, I want to meet with a counselor. Or they can anonymously say, hey, I'm worried about this other student and this situation with the student, so that the counselor can check in with them. So I thought that was a really good idea that came out of that. They'd like us to explore our policy on hats and hoods. They want more classroom meetings, so they talked about that. So they felt like, as Kylie shared, that this was a good start in terms of the counselors coming to see them. And so part of our follow-up with our committee is that somewhere in late January, the counselors will go back to the same classes that they went to before, to kind of hear from that, and also to share some of the ideas that collectively the students had that we're working on implementing in terms of that. And then various feedback in terms of making sure that we're hearing from our diverse student population, making sure that any students that feel like their voice might be marginalized, that we're hearing that. And so our counselors have invited students that wanted to have more input and follow-up to kind of give them their name. And so we're looking to include some more students in terms of that general feedback pattern that's there. All in all, I'm really proud of our students. They've been really resilient in very difficult situations, but their struggle right now, is real. They're feeling a sense of loss in many ways. Our staff is feeling that also. And this is a good time and good opportunity for us to get some good feedback from them on how we can listen to their voice in terms of what their feedback is.
Thanks, Paul. Any
Thank you.
questions for Mr. Kessler?
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kessler.
We do look forward to some of the recommendations coming this way when it comes to some of the things you mentioned.
Yeah, okay, great.
Okay.
So I have a couple of other pieces. One is a follow-up on the damage to the roof caused by the windstorm. Currently, there's sort of a three-piece repair process. The first was to ensure that the building was watertight, no further damage was happening. That was taken care of Monday by the roof being put back down, any holes being covered, and there's probably close to 6,000 pounds of blocks holding the roof piece down now. The second part will be some replacement hoods, which allow the dampers to work so that outside air can be brought in. That's so that we can start using the auditorium. We're hoping that that happens within the next few weeks. The third piece is the actual full repair of that, which we're going to be getting pricing on, quotes. We have to go through SED, our insurance company. There's a lot of pieces to that, as well as working through the architects to make sure that what we do is the appropriate repair. As an example, that roofing section is about 20 years old, and so the roof insulation that's under the membrane is no longer code. There's a different kind of, or a different level of insulation that's necessary. So they'll remove, when they do the repair, remove all of that insulation that underneath that and put in the new insulation. Our insurance is replacement insurance, so we're expecting that that may be a piece of the coverage. What we can get aid on the repairs. So how it will work would be our insurance covers up to that point. Anything beyond that, we get aid on the rest of that as long as it's approved by SED, which in this case, there's no reason why they wouldn't approve it. Any questions about that? Okay, our maintenance guys did a great job making sure we were ready to go and getting, I don't know how they got our full crew here for Monday morning to do this when everything was happening in the area, but Jason DeGraff did a great job making sure that that happened. The next thing, you may have seen my email that went out, or our email, I should say, that went out regarding the TikTok thread piece that's been rolling around, that they're not sure if that was created even outside of the country, but that's something that is a general thing that FBI and other law enforcement groups have checked into. It's unfounded. However, we wanted to make sure that people knew we were aware of it and that our police department was aware of it. That's why you saw the email. We don't anticipate any issue from that. However, the chief of police, Chief Ibush, has indicated that he'll have some extra, or that he'll focus his resources in our direction tomorrow, especially early on. And then finally, thank you for the thank you. I appreciate there's great people in this district, which was really made it easy to come back here. And this is a challenging time for school districts as well as most entities. And I think we're entering uncharted territory, right? So I've been a superintendent since 2006, but this is new to all of us. It's made rookies of us all in some ways, shape and form. And so I look forward to the work that Mr. Smith will be doing with your district. You've made a great choice, and I look forward to seeing the good things that happen in the Batavia City School District from here on out.
Thank you. Well, now you have more experience, so for your next interim job, you'll just say, oh, I've done that before. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
The next item on the agenda is reorganizational appointments updated.
We have Mr. Conrad.
Oh, Mr. Conrad is again. I'm sorry.
Sorry
I didn't
about
see
that.
you come in. Sorry.
I was here all along. So I have nothing as brave or as important to talk about than what you've already discussed. But briefly, I'd like to offer to any new trustees or anyone who remembers me speaking last year, your public library, the facility is owned and managed by the school district. If you don't understand the how or the why, please just drop me an email. I'll give you a full facility tour if you're interested. It takes about an hour for me to drag most staff through the building, but for you busy trustees, I can keep it down to about 20 minutes. And so my brief report is just, let me start by saying how pleased we as a library are with recent changes we've made to how we handle after-school discipline, mostly with the middle school students. We now reach out directly to the middle school and alert them basically of every step of our disciplinary process. It's a one-way relationship. They cannot communicate back to us how they're handling it on their end, but we've seen that it's effective. When the kids come back after their library board suspension, they're usually under better behavior, or sometimes the problems are addressed before it even reaches a suspension. So we're just very pleased with how that's been going about with middle school administrators. Let me offer my congratulations for selecting Jason Smith to be your superintendent. I have nothing bad to say about either of the last two or the acting superintendent, but I do serve on the Batavia Concert Band, where Jason is a player and has been the acting manager, and he's been a wonderful executive. I have the highest confidence in his abilities. I can also say that he began his career in education as a public library page at the Richmond Memorial Library, so we have a little something to do with his success. Then finally, this is always my chance to bring up the library facility needs. After all, that's the main point of our relationship. And I'll just say that our children's room bathrooms have not been updated since the late 70s when they were built. So as soon as the next opportunity comes, we would like to have those remodeled, refinished, and that may wait till the next capital improvement cycle of the school district, or if a sooner opportunity arises, we would happily take it. We generally are able to have 75% of the school's outlays reimbursed by New York State under a New York Library construction grant. And we've carried through on our end of that for the last couple of capital improvement cycles. I can't think of another need with our facility other than those children's room bathrooms. So keep that in mind when the opportunity arises, and especially if you're on the Buildings and Grounds Committee and have not yet been through the bowels of the library. I just gave my card to Britt, and she'll hook you up with an appointment. Thank you all for the work that you do, and I'll take any questions if you have them, or you can call the reference desk.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We will go on to reorganizational appointments, updated, effective January 3rd, 2022. A, Superintendent of Schools, and B, Chief Emergency Officer. I need a motion to accept this reorganizational appointment.
So,
Motion made by Mr. Regal. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bowman. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mr. Regal.
yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. We'll go on to designations, updated, place for regular board meetings, official bank signatories, designated educational official to receive court notification regarding a student's sentence, etc., and hearing official for participation in the federal child nutrition program. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Lunding. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Roll. Is there any discussion? Seeing none?
Mrs. Lundberg.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Authorizations updated, effective January 3rd, 2022. Approval of attendance at conferences, conventions, workshops, trainings. And B, superintendent to approve budget transfers within limit prescribed by the commissioner's regs. And C, apply for grants and aid, state and federal, as appropriate. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Bowman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Regal. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundberg.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is alterations. We have none. So, right? Right. And next is consent items. I need a motion for consent, please.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Regal, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lundey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we can call the vote.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. We are now on to new business. District policy updates. These policies have been reviewed by the policy committee and have been sent to us to approve. I need a motion to approve these policies.
I would also request to waive the second reading.
Oh, request to waive a second reading.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Regal. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lundey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Next item is Campus Construction Management Incorporated Resolution to appoint as construction manager for future projects and approval of the pre-referendum agreement. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Marucci. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Regal. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Resolution to appoint CPL Architecture Engineering Planning to provide architectural services for future projects. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Regal. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Roll. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Next is memorandum of agreement between the Batavia Clerical Association and the Batavia City School District Family and Medical Leave Act, Article 6. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Bowman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Regal. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Next is Upstate Institute membership renewal. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Regal. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Lundey. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. And the last item is Genesee County Chamber of Commerce membership renewal. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Roll. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marucci. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you can call the vote, please.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey.
Yes.
Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. Then the next item on the agenda is other reports, which we have none. So now I need a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Bowman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marucci. Is there any discussion? Seeing none?
This is for personnel.
Personnel.
related
I'm
matters.
sorry, I didn't list
And
that.
there's no expectation of business after executive session.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Mrs. Bowman.
Yes.
Mr. Marucci.
Yes.
Mr. Roll.
Yes.
Mr. Regal.
Yes.
Mrs. Lundey. Mrs. Benedict.
Yes. We are now in executive session.